disclosure, this is not my sermon. All right? We have joined a program called F.A.S T. The church has, and every weekday I get a notification of the next day's blog, and there's all kinds of resources. And as I was getting this week and started reading it, I thought, man, this is good stuff. I think I can use this as a sermon. So that's what we're having. So I'm going to preface this by this is not my own now. I'm adding my own little touches to it, of course, because it is personal. And one of the reasons why I'm sharing this is because I am having a personal struggle with this. Now the subject is, well, the title is Fast on Fasting, and the Bible study is called Fast. So that's where I got the title from. But many may remember the last week the pastor had asked for us to do at least a 24-hour fast. And the purpose of it was for us to focus on our membership and how we've had people who've come here before and they've just, it's dwindled to the point where, well, here we are today, right? And so our focus was to be fasting, and that would help us to draw attention to that and prayer to that. And then as I read this, a couple things came to mind. But first I want to tell you, if you want something for free, the best thing you need to do is say out loud so Satan can hear you, I'm not eating that anymore. Okay? Because personal experience, had the little Debbie used to make the little ding dong looking ones, the chocolate ones, and I was eating a box of those a day. I know, right? That's awful. And I finally said, I've got to stop it. And I tried to maybe take 2 or 3, and that would work until I got home and finished the rest of the box. So I said, that's it. All right, I'm not going to do it. I'm just cold turkey. I'm just not going to eat them anymore. So I went to work that day, and my stomach was all, okay, come on, find somewhere. No, I'm not going to do it. I committed to this. I get home from working, and I go inside and open up the door and put my stuff down, and on the couch was a note from Amanda with a brand new box of the exact same one. Now, I'm not making that up. She brought me the exact same ones. Now, just a few weeks ago, I had decided during the day I wasn't going to eat something. I can't remember what it was, but literally, I said it out loud. I said, man, Lord, I'm not going to do this today. I just can't do this. Somebody on my route gave me a box of them. I can't even remember what it was. But I know. So there's a point, if you're going to do it, just keep your mouth shut. Keep it between you and God. Because Satan finds out you're doing something, he's going to have, I tell you what I need to do is say I'm going to give up my car. Say it out loud, and then, I'll get a Lamborghini or something. I don't know. Does it work that way? That would be great. All right, so we're going to get into this program on fasting. And I'm going to read it, and I'll interject where I can, that it's my own personal, but this is from the program. And I want to talk to you about a spiritual discipline we don't hear that much about these days, because we've been talking about it a little bit. One that certainly goes against our popular culture of self-indulgence. That's true. But as important facet of life of Jesus. And I believe it is important still today. I'm talking, of course, about the spiritual discipline of fasting. This is a theme that runs throughout the Bible, and right around 50 references to it. It is also something that Jesus expected his followers to practice. Excuse me. As we read earlier in Matthew 9:15, and Jesus said unto them, can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then they shall fast. Granted, it's not exactly an explicit command, but it's close. In the context, Jesus was asked why his disciples didn't fast. While his disciples, like disciples of John the Baptist, like they were doing, for that matter. The Pharisees, they fasted as well. Well, his answer was, as long as Jesus was with them, his disciples were not going to fast. His presence was something to be celebrated, not mourned. But once Jesus returned to heaven, they would indeed begin fasting. Then they were going to need it, and by implication, so do we. This suggests something about the purpose of fasting, that is not primarily for regaining health or to lose weight, nor is it some religious duty. Catch this. It is not a religious duty or obligation that we are commanded to practice. It is certainly not to impress people, to make some kind of show for our spirituality. In fact, I don't even think it is intended to impress God, as if we could somehow persuade God to answer our prayers if we just fasted long enough. No, fasting is an entirely different purpose. And I'd like to interject in here that one of the reasons why I fasted was I believe that when you're hungry, it draws attention to whatever you're fasting for. So if I'm praying for a family member and I do a fast, when I get hungry, I go, oh, I gotta pray, I gotta pray, I gotta pray. And after doing this lesson, I'm not for sure if that's exactly how it's supposed to work. As a matter of fact, just follow with me and see if you don't agree. Fasting exists to help us put us back in connection with Jesus when we feel he is distant. There is something about depriving ourselves of food that sharpens our spiritual senses, making it possible to reach out more effectively and reconnect with Jesus. It can take a few days. David appears to have been a frequent faster. I humbled my soul with fasting in Psalms 35. I chastened my soul with fasting in Psalms 69. In fact, some of these were extended fasts, so long that he would say, my knees are weak through fasting, and my flesh faileth of fatness, in Psalms 109. When his first child with Bathsheba died, for example, he fasted 7 days. It seems clear to me that this frequent fasting strengthened his desire for God, almost as if the physical hunger somehow morphed into a spiritual hunger for God. Thus we read, my soul panteth for God. In Psalms 42, my soul thirsteth for thee, my flesh longeth for thee, in Psalm 63. There is none upon the earth that I desire besides thee, in Psalms 73. My heart and my flesh crieth out for the living God, Psalms 84:2. Somehow, quickening one's appetite can quicken one's hunger for God. The opposite is certainly true. Before going into the promised land, if you'll remember, where the children of Israel would inherit their houses and lands, God warned them carefully. In Deuteronomy, he says, beware that thou forgotten not the Lord thy God when thou hast eaten and art full. Okay, Deuteronomy 11 through 12. Overindulgence of appetite, it seems, results in deadening of desire for food and a corresponding deadening of our desire of God. And I think that goes along with anything. If you feel like you're fattened with possessions and stuff like that, not just food, but also you rely less on God. It seems to be diminished. And if a few chapters later in the book of Matthew, Jesus observes that the ears of his listeners are dull of hearing, and their eyes have been closed, so they cannot understand with their ears and be converted. Matthew 13. The first few words in this verse give the reason, for the people's heart is waxed gross or fat. It's pretty inescapable that there are some link to indulgence and dullness, between self-denial and discernment. The disciples really didn't need to fast while Jesus was right there with them. They were basking in the full glory of the Word made flesh. Amen. But Jesus knew their time together was limited, and after his departure, they were going to yearn for the connection to continue. The key, it seems, would be to fast now and then, and strengthen thy hunger for Christ. Their alertness, their discernment, they could use to solidify their connected with the one who was no longer physically present. He is, after all, our example. He seemed to suggest his disciples would find it useful in reconnecting with him after he returned to heaven. It can certainly do the same for us. If we want to strengthen our link to Jesus, fasting can help. Matthew 4:4. But he answered and said, It is written that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. If you recall, this response of Jesus was to the first temptation thrown at him in the wilderness. Jesus had been led of the Spirit to go into the wilderness and spend some time with God, fasting in preparation for his life's work. He had already gone 40 days and nights without food. That's incredible. Now, this wasn't like Moses or Elijah. Both of these individuals went 40 days without food, but they were sustained supernaturally with no ill effect. In the case of Jesus, he suffered the full physical impact and abrasion and abasing from food. After the 3 temptations, angels came and ministered unto him. Matthew 4:11. He was likely so weak from his fast that he would not have been able to make it down without assistance from heaven. And I thought about this. When Moses came down from the mountain, he was up there for 40 days. What was his condition? He literally glowed. His presence with the Lord was sustaining. He didn't come down famished and hungry or weak. Jesus went through all the physical attributes to fasting for 40 days. So why did he have such a severe fast? It suggests this initial extended fast was necessary to purge away any potential distraction or risk to his ministry. To gain such a complete victory over appetite, his focus would be 100% locked into his connection with heaven. This fast, combined with prayer and meditation that took place during these 40 days, dramatically strengthened Jesus. And we read in Luke's version that he came back from his temptation in the power of the Spirit. Luke 4:14. Clearly, fasting was a vital preparation for his battle with the enemy. That's really what his very first temptation was all about. Though Jesus was certainly hungry and in need of food, the temptation to turn stones into bread had no impact. Why? Because he had transitioned his desires fully from his physical needs to his spiritual needs. He was wholly locked into the reality that his only hope was to live by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. It wasn't physical bread that was most important. It was spiritual bread. Fasting can help us make the transition too. Now, let me hasten to add that we should not start out with an extended fast like this. And I might personally just want to say that it's a lot harder. I think it would make it harder for you to do this. We're not asking to do a 40-day fast. Jesus had creation on the line when he did this. Okay? So that's not what we're trying to, that's not an example that I don't think we should be following. And if you are, then that's between you and the Lord, but I wouldn't recommend it. Before attempting a fast of one more or just a few days, it's important to understand the physical changes that are going to take place in our bodies when we stop eating. How to manage these changes properly, how to break our fast safely. To do otherwise can be dangerous, and there are other precautions. We need to make sure to drink lots of water and perhaps other fluids. And if we have complicating health conditions, we should consult a health professional to make sure that fasting is safe for us. In other words, use your head. Okay, make sure it's safe for you. No doubt, Jesus had fasted many times prior as a young man, and was in perfect health when he began his fast. He knew exactly what he was doing. Furthermore, he was specifically led by God to spend this time. It is a vital preparation for what is going to be the most important and difficult work ever attempted by man, the redemption of a lost world. Most of us will probably never need to attempt such a lengthy fast. But if we're about to launch into some new adventure and are facing some big transition or change in our life, about to tackle something big or pursue some mission, or maybe we're just dealing with personal issues, it may be it may be we should take a fast a few days or longer in preparation for that new work. To really seek God, to make sure our connection is firm, to search our heart and to purge out any faulty motives or fears or weakness so we can pursue that new phase of life fully linked to heaven. Jesus started his ministry this way. His life also illustrated times it may be appropriate to fast. We saw one situation, the launch of some new phase of life of ministry. Now we're going to look at a second situation in which it's appropriate to fast and what happens when we fail. Matthew 17:21 says, "Howbeit this kind goeth not out by prayer, but by prayer and fasting." At this point in his ministry, Jesus had been sending out his disciples for some time, have given them the power to heal the sick and cast out devils, and they had been having amazing success. But on this particular day, they had a setback. Jesus had gone up into a high mountain with Peter, James, and John, where he was transfigured before them. This left the other 9 down at the bottom of the mountain. Being left behind like that no doubt affected them. It seems they had started out thinking who was going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. In fact, they asked Jesus about that specifically in the next chapter in Matthew 18. Regardless, when Jesus comes down, they see a man with a boy suffering from some kind of demonic problem or possession. And that was only further humiliation for them. The disciples were unable to cast this devil out. Jesus, of course, was successful and resolved the problem. After which the disciples pulled him aside and asked us questions. Well, why couldn't we cast him out? Matthew 17:19. His answer, because of your unbelief. And then today's verse, in this verse, some problems require extra measure of faith. The kind of faith you can only get one way. This kind goeth out not by prayer, by only prayer and fasting. Reading between the lines, it seems likely that the 9 were disconnecting from Christ by their negative thoughts towards the other 3 with Jesus. And this kind of negative thinking was snapping away at their spirituality. It was weakening their hold on divine power. They had spent more time praying and, yes, fasting. It might have been able to prevent what was happening. But by pouring out their heart into God, he would have showed them that their thoughts were wrong, that they could have repented, and that they would have defeated the devil. But alas, they failed in his path. In other words, when Jesus left them, they were so focused on the 2 guys going with them that they thought, well, we're going to miss out on a place with Jesus. They were still thinking about earthly things. They weren't concentrating on the spiritual things. So when they were unable to cast out the devil, Jesus pointed out that this is a kind that you need fasting and prayer. In other words, as we're discussing, you needed to be reconnected to the power source, and that fasting is a way of doing it. Excuse me. We face similar situations in times today where our negative thoughts and feelings threaten to undo us. We face challenges or obstacles that seem overwhelming, where the temptation seems too strong to defeat. In these and any other similar situation where we need more faith, the solution is always the same. Spend time in fasting and prayer. Rebuild that connection. Allow God to purge your heart, to strengthen your trust in God, and he will come out, we'll come out the other end with power of the Holy Spirit and conquer in Jesus' name. We don't need to fast for every little trial or temptation. But when we face these challenges, we can't just seem to break through. Fasting may be the only way to get the victory we need at last. To close, and this is a good note to end on. We've looked at the fact that fasting is important. At specific times, fasting is especially appropriate. But we haven't really looked at how long to fast or how much to fast. And And actually, the Bible doesn't give us a lot of instructions on that. At least not in at least not the psychological side of it. But Jesus does give us valuable insights to the spiritual side of fasting. And we will be looking at that in Matthew 6:16. Moreover, when ye fast, be not as the hypocrites of sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear unto men to fast. Verily I say unto you, they have the reward. I've done a sermon a while back where I talked about having a reward, about going around and announcing all the good things you've done. Well, when you get the praise of men, you've received your reward. That's the same with fasting. If you go around telling everybody you're fasting and making a deal out of it, you have received your reward. Okay? The core principle of fasting, or giving, or praying for that matter, is some kind of impression on people is not going to count for anything with God. To intentionally go around disfiguring our faces so everyone knows we're fasting is you forfeit the potential reward from heaven. Well, let me restate that again. If you're fasting about something and you mean it, but then you go out and start letting everybody know why you're fasting or that you're fasting. And the same thing goes with the specific prayer or with giving. If you're giving something or you're doing something, the blessing that you can receive from this is basically nullified when you start worrying about the rewards of man instead of what God's going to do. So don't look forward to man's praise when you're doing anything that is for God, and that includes fasting. All right, let me get well, we can also let people know in other ways, mentioning the fact that we're fasting, talking about how hungry we are, explaining why we can't eat when offered some food, rather than just saying no thanks. All of these things are ways that we can draw attention to our action and seem to be ruled out by this principle. But simply, if you fast, keep it a secret, which is where today's practical suggestion comes in. When thou fastest, anoint thine head, wash thy face, that thou appear not unto men to fast. And that's in Matthew 6:17-18. In other words, try to act as normal as possible. And in particular, make an effort to suppress any subtle, even unconscious attempt to hint at the reason why you're fasting. There's no point in going through all that discomfort of skipping multiple meals and then sabotage the blessings that can come from it, right? You don't want to lose it. Of course, the real issue is not whether or people know that we're fasting or not. Obviously, immediate family or friends that are with you may know that you're fasting. It's more a question of what is your motive? Is it to make ourselves look good in some way, to show how spiritual we are, or is it truly about seeking God and humbling ourselves before Him and Him alone? When we fast, it should be unto thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward you openly, and that's Matthew 6:18. Giving can similarly be perverted. A prayer can likewise be corrupted. In all three of these spiritual disciplines, fasting, giving, and prayer, Jesus makes the exact same statement. God sees what we do in secret. And if our purpose is to truly give to Him, to pray to Him, to fast to Him, with no complicating ulterior motives, then God will engage with us there in those secret places, and ultimately He will reward us. It's human nature to avoid direct contact with a holy God. Looking at Jesus' face, we don't want to do that. And there are all sorts of reasons we do religious things that have nothing to do with personal divine encounter. But if it is our goal, our longing, our pursuit, then God, who knows our heart, will consent to meet with us, and we will surely be blessed. It's interesting that Jesus never really said much about the practical aspects of fasting. how to begin a fast, how to maintain it, how to end it. But there are certainly some helpful things he could have said. He could have said on these topics. But as usual, Jesus went right to the heart of the issue. Fasting for spiritual purposes has one priority characteristic. It must be wholehearted in the pursuit of God. Fast in the way Jesus taught, and you will discover countless blessings in the process. And that is from our fast program. Okay?
Very good, Mike.
Yeah, I thought it was too good not to share.
Because when I was fasting for 3 days because I didn't know about the churches. But I did it for my health. But I just forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I think one of the things, here's what I learned out of it. Okay, so to recap what I learned, and hopefully you can get something out of it. I believe that, of course, I've heard of fasting for health. There's intermittent fasting, which is something I believe in, for your own health, and that's good. But I had come to the conclusion that the purpose of fasting was to grieve ourselves, our bodies, so that we would remember to pray. And that's how I've been fasting. But after looking at this, I'm more to the conclusion it's not your own source you're looking for. Okay? Fasting should lead you to a better connection with Jesus. Put you in alignment with his will. And by fasting and seeking that connection, then you can have these great temptations beat, or this great prayer answered, or this great decision can be made. Because you know that you have reconnected with God. And with God's connection, you follow whose will?
His will.
You follow his will. Before you have a connection with God, whose will do we follow? We follow our own. So if you have something that you are wondering, am I following God's will? Is this something that I need to think about? Fasting for a couple of days, secretly, keeping it to yourselves, if you can, and solely concentrating on making that connection with God is the answer. And that's how you should do it. That's what I learned out of this. So this has changed my perspective on why I should fast and how I should fast. Okay, I can still fast for a meal or two to try to be healthy. That's something different. That's not trying to reconnect with God. However, we have discovered, we know that the clearer your mind are, the better your connection with God is. So along with fasting, I want to point out that your health is important. Now, I had a quote, and I didn't print it up because I thought, well, I'll just use my phone, which is recording this right now, so I can't look at it. But I saw a quote from Ellen White, and it was in Counsels on Diet and Health. And I'm not going to be able to quote it. I'm going to get as close as I can, and later on we can look it up so I can show you what it says exactly. But it says that when you put something down at your table that is unhealthy, it's a sin. Yeah, see, I can't get around that. You can't go, well, it's just a little. Well, she calls it a sin. And, that hurts. That kind of gets me right here. Because I eat stuff that is just awful. And I know it. It's not like I don't know that this is bad for you. I know it. And I do it anyhow. So now I'm confronted with this reality that it's a sin to do so. And I really need to approach that. And so, along with the fasting program that I got from this and that quote from Ellen White, there's going to be some changes in my diet. And it has to happen. It has to. I've known this for a long time. Yes, Karen?
Well, you know that book that I brought about the military,
The boot camp.
the boot camp?
Okay.
That is right in there. It says that the diet, well, you just have to read it.
It
Mike.
says, it
You
talks
don't
about
have
the
to read
diet.
and you don't have to read the whole book. Just there's a first part of that book. In the last days, our people will be fasting.
And we should. And that's good. That's a good point. We are such a small group. And I know our hearts, we think about friends and family and co-workers, and we want them to know the truth. And we want to see them here, sitting here with us. We want them to share a meal with us, a healthy meal, by the way. We want them to be engaged with us. We want them to experience the things we've been through, whether it be the Sabbath or other personal experiences that Jesus has led us through. Our testimony, we want them to experience that as well. Everybody will have their own testimony. And like you said, Pam is going to be bringing hers, right? In 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Okay. So I'm going to end it there, and we'll close the song, and I'm going to go ahead and shut off the video.